Do we have too much government?
We need to put people ahead of corporate profits.
This system is so lopsided. This threat is a real threat to democracy.
And I think that's really important. That's something we haven't been doing in this country for a long time.
Where do you start? What do you do? How do you do it?
Access to Democracy is sponsored by Thomson Reuters, providing legal professionals with the intelligence, technology, and human expertise they need to find trusted answers. Products include Westlaw, Practical Law, and Firm Central legal practice management software for small law firms. Thomson Reuters, the answer company. Online at thomsonreuters.com. Access to Democracy is made possible in part by a donation from Firefly Credit Union. Firefly is the new name of U.S. Federal Credit Union, which has proudly served the financial needs of the Greater Twin Cities community since 1925. At Firefly, we guide our members forward and give them the power to chase dreams by delivering the financial solutions they need to get ahead. From checking accounts to mortgages, we'll light the way. We are Firefly Credit Union, and this is Life Illuminated. And Dr. Charles Crutchfield of award-winning Crutchfield Dermatology in Eagan, acknowledged as one of the nation's best physicians. A Minnesota native who trained at the Mayo Clinic, Dr. Crutchfield personally treats all patients and states that experience counts and quality matters. Crutchfield Dermatology. Look good, feel great, with beautiful skin.
Hi, welcome to Access to Democracy. I'm Roxanne Meshar. I'm your host today. And our guest today is Holly Jenkins, who is running for Dakota County Commissioner for District 4. And she has an interesting message to share and an interesting background story in terms of why she's chosen to run. So Holly, first of all, welcome back to Access to Democracy.
I always appreciate it.
And for viewers who may not have seen you on the first show, let's just do a little bit of background, because this choice to run for county commissioner didn't just pop up out of nowhere. You've had many years of volunteer and interest in Lebanon Hills and other green spaces and things that are going on in Dakota County. So maybe share a little bit about how this came to be.
Yeah, you bet. I will. I can share a little bit of the background of Lebanon Hills and then why I decided to run and how that came to be.
Exactly.
Lebanon Hills, as many people are aware, is a regional park in Dakota County. It is Dakota County's largest, most frequently visited park, and what makes it so special to so many people is its unique character, its natural character, its lack of built infrastructure. It's a beautiful resource in our community for nature-based recreation and education opportunities, and people really value the natural resources within that park. So back in 2013, I learned that there was a new plan that was being proposed by the county, and it involved putting a bike trail through the park. And a bike trail through the park, as we learned after the fact, what they were really planning was much greater than that. So over the course of 2 years, people started to learn about the plan because we had established a nonprofit organization called Wilderness in the City in order to get information out to people. Now, I should mention that's the type of thing that I believe that the county board should be responsible doing all the time, is getting this kind of information out to people, showing them how to provide input, and then that input should make a difference. But after 2 years of the vast majority of public input opposing this new concept for Lebanon Hills, the board approved the plan regardless, and it continued to move forward through the Met Council. So I sat back, and it was somewhat devastating to so many people who had spent so much time providing their input for this plan to just keep moving along despite this horrendous, a lot of
concerns.
Input. Yes, yeah. And so I sat back for a long time just wondering how can this happen? how can an elected body take a plan that is opposed by the vast majority of their constituents and move it along regardless? And in that same fashion, how can these elected representatives take the previous plan, the 2001 plan for this park, and not implement it the way it was intended? How can they use eminent domain against people for a bike trail and clear-cut 200-foot wide swaths of forest when the public was opposing all this? And the bottom line to me is that the county board is such an invisible layer of government that they can make these decisions in an isolated manner. They often make them in conjunction with the Met Council or legislators, but the general public is basically kept out of the decision-making process.
And hidden is a good word, because the truth is most of us don't know who represents us on our county commission. We don't have a good idea of what that layer of government does or the size of their budget, which is quite substantial, quite large. And we're not very knowledgeable as a rule, much more so about maybe our state senators or representatives or national senators and representatives. But if you ask the average person about the nature of their local county government, they wouldn't really know. So you started to see how hidden this layer really was, that it's really not something that people generally know or have any understanding of.
Yeah, and that's further evidence just by the fact that the majority of people I've been talking with in the last year don't know what a county commissioner does, is not aware of the decision making that's taking place, and really doesn't know how their money's being spent. And the reason I feel that's detrimental to our communities is because the decisions that are being made at this level of government really do impact our day-to-day quality of life and our future quality of life with regards to development that's taking place.
There's other projects happening right now too that's similar to Lebanon Hills, where you come to start looking around at other projects. You might want to mention briefly, I know there's the zoo construction project, library, ongoing things, maybe say a little bit.
You know, the Minnesota Zoo, the bridge that was just built there is a good example where public input was asked for after the fact. The county had already made the decision to use this $3 million federal grant, and it was also included Met Council money and state funds to build this trail, or this bridge by the Minnesota Zoo. And when they told the public about it, most people felt, you know, there's already trails that get you to the zoo, there's bike trails that get you there. Do we really need to spend the $3 million on this bridge? And if you're insistent on spending it, how about putting that bridge in a different area where more people will utilize it? Unfortunately, it didn't matter. It was the decision had been made, the public input, they checked it off the box, and they moved on, and now we have this new bridge.
So ultimately, we have public input, but not in the right location. So the process itself is being circumvented because decision making is happening well before input is being requested.
Right, and the research I've done points the finger at bringing people into the conversation earlier. And that's the board's responsibility to be doing that. It's the board's responsibility to reach out to people, provide open forums for discussion, let people know what decisions are being considered or what issues are being considered, and then listen to the people's reactions, hear what they have to say, and move forward based on those reactions. I don't think that you take those, I don't think that's happening now. I believe that the board is not having these open two-way dialogues with the general public to the level that they could be in order to be more responsive to people's concerns.
Certainly that's quite possible at the county level of government, because certainly it happens at the state level and it happens at the national level, as we all know. So certainly at a more local level, it's quite feasible to say yes, including public opinion and public conversation and discussion and points of view is either not happening at the correct stage in the process or not being considered when decision making is happening. So certainly not unlikely to imagine that that's going on, and you're experiencing it firsthand on a number of issues.
Right, and I think, if you take this back to Lebanon Hills, had there been earlier conversation, the board's decision to turn Lebanon Hills into the hub of their Greenway bike network took place in 2008, and people at that time were not aware of it. There was no public involvement in coming up with that plan. Had they had meaningful citizen engagement at that time, I don't think that plan ever would have gotten to the point that it went to.
Might have had a different plan.
It would have had it would have come up with a solution that maybe not everybody would have agreed to or liked, but people would have had a much better understanding, a bigger perspective, or understanding of other perspectives and why decisions were made. And that's what happened in the 2001 plan. When there was open discussion, you had broad public support.
Yes.
And then the board would be expected to move forward and implement that plan. That's not what is happening right now.
And I think also you're realizing that as you look into what happens at the county government level, there's a lot of funding, like legacy funding, for example, that decisions are being made in terms of how that money gets spent, but we're not clear about how that decision gets made, how decisions are prioritized. It's not evident or not easily accessible to the average voter to find out how things are being prioritized. And perhaps you want to share more about your expedition into that part of the process.
You know, in the Lebanon Hills issue led us to try and figure out, first of all, where was the money coming from? Because everyone says, follow the money, follow the money. So we followed the money. And what we learned is that all these development plans so many of these development plans taking place in our regional parks are being funded in part by the Legacy Amendment dollars. And most people who voted to support the Legacy Amendment have clearly stated it was to preserve water, to preserve our natural resources, to conserve land. And instead, we find that the legacy funds are being used to match federal transportation grants, to match other grants that then lead to these excessive construction projects within our parks. Now, keeping in mind that the regional parks were set aside in the first place because they contain such high quality natural resources, it seemed somewhat of a conflict. And so a number of people have been attending Met Council hearings, submitting comments, expressing to the legislators, this is not what we intended for our legacy money to be used. But this process continues. They just recently, the park implementing agencies just submitted their priority list, and the majority of that money is still being used for construction projects within the parks, even though people keep saying,
don't do that.
That's not how we want them. That's not how we want those funds used.
Yeah, let's stop and think about how that money
gets spent. And at some point, somebody has to start listening. And when I've seen this take place time and time again, that the public is coming into these meetings and expressing their priorities and their values, and it's just being pushed aside, you finally get to the point where you say, it can't sit back anymore. Nothing's going to change until we start electing people who genuinely value public involvement and community engagement.
And it really is, I think you're right, it is about the process and how that process is playing out, even more important than ultimately totally focusing on the decision at the end.
Right.
It's about engaging people early on in their own communities about what's happening and why, and encouraging them to be part of this discussion. So that now drives your decision to run for county commissioner, does it not?
Yes. Yeah. It was just about a year ago that I was sitting in a board meeting listening to testimony from the public, and it just didn't matter, and it didn't change that final decision. And I just thought, we have to start improving this. We're going to build stronger communities when the public is more engaged with the decisions that are taking place.
And so you decided to step up and do something yourself, which each of us actually can, and you were in a position or place where you made that something you wanted to pursue going forward. So it's a big part of your life already because you've done all this volunteer work over many, many years, and you're pretty actively involved in local government in terms of what's going on and being informed, and Wilderness in the City is another way to help inform people. So this is just a natural extension of that, I think.
Well, that's what I feel. It wasn't a plan that I had. It just seemed to be the right direction to take because we were making some changes. I mean, we've been able to get information out, bring more transparency to park issues, but I believe that needs to happen on every element that the county is working on. When they provide their list of priorities to the legislature at the start of the year, I think that's something that the public, I know they would be concerned. They'd like to see it. They'd like to at least have that opportunity. And when I'm talking to people about these issues, it's very good response. People are they would like to stay informed. They would like to have that information readily available. They may not weigh in, but they should have that opportunity, and it should mean something. And I strongly believe that once public input starts to actually influence that final decision, people will start to feel more trusting of the process. Right now, there's such a cynicism towards providing input, and how often you hear someone say, what's the point? They're going to do whatever they want to do. And I think we can change that. I know we can. And it's evolved over time. I don't think anyone sat down and said we're going to start to just disregard public input. I just think that's evolved. And it's going to take some time.
The default position, but it doesn't need to be the default position. It can be a different position. So,
and I think that the closer we can get to that meaningful citizen engagement, we're going to have these better, more positive relationships with our elected officials. You won't have so much negative, so many negative things coming out of the news. It'll be a positive relationship.
So this is kind of a nice segue into something that we've talked a little bit about before, which is when you're elected, what are you going to focus on most? So what's going to be priorities for you? Certainly the process, but share a little bit about that.
You know, what I've been telling people, again, my number one issue is a high quality of life and affordable taxes. Right now, you hear a lot about the property taxes being the lowest. Dakota County is the lowest property taxes, but I think we need to look a little bit deeper than that and make sure that, you know, what if the next level of property taxes goes up to 25%? Does that make 24% okay?
Yeah.
So I want to make sure that people understand where their money is being spent and do they support it. I'd like to just offer more open forums for discussion, whether it's town hall meetings or monthly coffees, just to be able to engage with the community more than we're doing currently. So that's a huge priority. You know, what got me involved in county issues was the natural resource piece, and I still to this day do not see a true commitment on this part of our county board to preservation. There's a beautiful, beautiful land in Inver Grove Heights that a gentleman has been trying to get a conservation easement for almost 10 years now. The original land protection plan was approved in 2001, I believe, and his property was ranked the #1 area that the community people wanted to see preserved. And it's still lingering, it's still languishing, and it's getting close to being too late to conserve this land. So you see decisions like that where the public did weigh in, but the board doesn't follow through. We need the board to be more committed, accountable to what their constituents are
and responsible
asking. More responsive. So the community engagement, natural resource piece of it, and just hopefully that'll start to improve a variety of other areas with regard to the county board.
So with regard to cynics out there who will say, well, what will stop you from becoming no different than the people currently serving on the commission? I know you've thought about that, so.
And that is one of the questions people say, you're one of 7, how are you going to make a difference? And I guess I've never, if it was me 1 against 7, I'd be silly to make this effort. But I look at it more as a partnership with the community and with people. So it's not just me against a board, it's me plus members in my community that want this to happen. In order to improve community engagement, you have to have a partnership with the general public and a board member. And I want to be that partner. I want to be that person that the community can trust and can talk to, and I will work hard to bring their voice back to the board discussion. I think the more that you see that happening, the more likely it is that the other commissioners will also feel the same way, and I'll certainly work together with them and try to encourage them to look more into this different type of process, because I think it's what we need going forward. On every level.
Yes, and I think it's very easy for us to become cynical and say, well, there's nothing that can be done. But the truth is, the government is us. We are the government, and you're modeling that in your candidacy of saying, you know, it's not enough to sit back and say, this is just a shame that they aren't handling the process the way it ought to be done, and say, gee, that's too bad. It'd be very easy to just become cynical and you know, wipe your hands of that and say, well, I did all I could and that's the end of that.
Yeah.
Or say, no, I am the government too. I give my consent, I can participate to the degree I want to, and I can become part of this process. So that's a very different model, which is kind of nice to see actually going forward.
Well, and I have to say, one question that actually stumped me one time while I'm out talking to people, what are your top 3 priorities, she said. And I said, well, let me turn that around. What are your priorities? Because that's the whole point of an elected official. Your priorities are my priorities, and what's important to you, that's what I want to take back and have these more discussions with people about issues that matter to them. For me, of course, it was the parks that brought me in. For somebody else, it might be the lack of crosswalks by school zones.
So you've been doing
Those
a
are
lot
the
of
things
door
that are
knocking,
important.
and we're doing this campaign and talking to lots and lots of people, hundreds of people. What are the issues that come up most with people?
I want to say, first of all, that just the awareness of what the county board does and raising this level of government to a new visible level among people has been a big part of what I've been trying to do. But some of the biggest issues that people are passionate about, I've heard more folks that want some type of transportation, make their intersections near their homes more safe.
Yes.
That those types of discussions come up, and I wonder, why is it that instead of focusing on some of these really simple, what I think should be simple issues, putting in a crosswalk by a school zone with an ice cream shop across the street, that seems like it should not be that complicated, yet those types of requests by the public seem to get pushed aside, and instead we're building bridges by the Minnesota Zoo that people don't really think will get utilized.
Wow, yeah.
So where's the priority? Where's the responsiveness?
Yes, exactly. So how has it been running a campaign for you? Because you're new to this. You are not a politician by trade, and you do
probably
not.
comes across clear.
But that's what's refreshing, and that's what's so great, you know.
It's been intense. It's been a lot of fun. I'm going to encourage so many other people to throw their name in the hat. We need to have candidates. We need to have more people willing to take this on. But there's a lot to learn to it, and it's been quite a learning curve the last 6 months. But I'm inspired by it, and it's been absolutely my pleasure to get out talking with people. It's been really, I don't know what to say, just heartwarming to hear how much people love, they love Dakota County. They
like their
but
community.
they also believe that there's room for improvement. They want to know what's going on. I hear too often the elected officials say people really don't care. I disagree.
Yeah,
I think people do care.
I
I think you
you're
just
right.
made it hard. I think it's hard for them to hear what's happening, and that's the board's responsibility to make that information available.
Very good, very good. So it'll be fun to watch you as you move through this process, and I know you'll do kind of an amazing job because you will be modeling something different just by being there, and you will engage the community in a different way. And you have a history of volunteering and concern and working on public's behalf for a lot of these local issues, and this is just a natural outcome, it seems to me, of all that
Thank you.
work and effort.
It would be an honor. It's hard to it again is hard to get your name out there and have people understand what you're trying to do. But the folks who have the people that I talk to that understand what I'm trying to do, they've been very supportive, and I couldn't be more appreciative of that.
You can see it in too. I notice you have the vote for my friend,
Yes.
which is for people who don't know about that. Explain what that is.
No,
it's very fun.
It's a theme that we came up with. It was how can I stand apart from your status quo politician, and part of it was in our campaign strategy was to create a vote for my friend image. So we've been going around to different events and other meetings I've been to with the big sign that folks who are supporting me are holding up the vote for my friend, and it's on our Facebook page. And that's been a lot of fun. I get emails from people, when can I get my picture, vote for my friend? And again, it's just to help to strengthen the fact that I'm not the status quo, that I'm trying to improve the status quo.
Yeah, something new
That
and
I
different.
really, at my core, believe in community engagement, and that will lead to better decisions, more efficient government, more responsive government. There's just no downside to it. It might take longer to get to these some of the decisions, but it's the right thing to do.
Yes. We have a lot of voters out there who are binary. You're either for one party or for another party, and I'm sure you get asked that a lot. Which party are you?
Yeah.
And you have an interesting response to that, which I think is quite true, actually. So maybe you want to.
Again,
share
I've
about
never
that.
been heavily invested in politics, and so when people ask me that question, I basically say it's a nonpartisan office, and I'm about as nonpartisan a person as it gets. I truly believe that the issues I'm running on should cover all bases, and it should be important to whatever your party affiliation is.
Yes.
Who doesn't see some benefit to greater transparency? It doesn't matter if you think that money should be spent here, there, or otherwise. You just simply should have a right to know how it's being spent and how the decisions are being made. That's what I think is appealing about my campaign. And I've seen my lawn signs mixed in with Republican signs, with Democrat signs, with
Right.
independent parties.
Because the party question is the wrong question.
Yeah,
The right question is, how important is transparency to you? How important is
Right.
responsiveness of local government? How important is accountability and responsibility? That's the question.
And transparency is that is the heart of democracy, because if you don't know what your elected officials are really doing, how do you meaningfully vote for these individuals?
Correct.
How do they meaningfully represent you if there's not an ongoing dialogue so they hear what your priorities are? I know the county does take numerous surveys, but I've also thoroughly analyzed those surveys versus what's happening, and it just seems as though the surveys are there and they get set on the shelf.
Wow.
And if that's how they're gathering their information, then they need to really follow that information. If that's not what they're going to use, then they need to be out talking to people. Otherwise, these decisions are being based on availability of outside funds, outside sources of other decision makers, and again, the general public just continues to be kept out of the loop.
True. It's not too late for people to get involved. No. We have a number of days left before the election, and voters and others too can still go to vote4Jenkins.com and learn more about you and your campaign, and volunteer to help in door knocking, do whatever.
It is. We have all 4 days left, and I know early voting is well underway, but absolutely we'll be busy this weekend trying to reach out to people who haven't already voted and also who just haven't fully decided. I would invite anyone to visit my website, and if you like what I'm bringing, if you like what I'm doing, please give me a chance. I would be honored.
Yeah, get involved and learn more, and think about the importance of local government and local community. Very true.
Yeah.
So, what, in closing, would you want to leave with viewers? What's
regardless of
mind?
the outcome of this campaign, I'm thrilled that I've been able to get out and talk about this issue for the past few months. So I'm thankful for that. I will continue to try and shine a spotlight on this invisible layer of government, but I can't do it alone. I need people who believe that this government, that our local level of government does make a difference in our lives. I hope that you will get in touch with me. We'll keep this going, and eventually everybody's going to know who their county board member is and what they do. And so you'll be able to cast a meaningful vote.
Which would be great. Anyway, well, thank you so much for joining us on this show. It's been a wonderful conversation and discussion, and hopefully we'll be able to have you back. And thank you for joining us today and watching Access to Democracy. And until next time, bye now.